What's going on, guys? Welcome to my tier list for the 2023 Mexico City Grand Prix. Once again, we are ranking every driver, all 20 drivers that took place in the 2023 Mexico City Grand Prix, or Mexican Grand Prix, however you want to call it. And yeah, basically putting them in a tier list on how they did. Yeah, mainly talking about the race itself. Qualifying is somewhat, a part of it as well, but it is majoritively the actual Grand Prix itself, and we didn't have a sprint weekend this time, so it is just the Grand Prix to look at, really. So let's get started with Alexander Albon, finished in P9, and yeah, pretty good race. Williams seemed a bit all over the place this weekend. In practice, Albon was like P2, I think, in 2 of the practice sessions. Qualifying didn't quite go as well, only qualified P14. Managed to get up to P9 in the race though. So yeah, I mean, with Perez retiring, without that happening, it probably would have been P10, but still a good performance for Alex. I think I'm going to go A. It's the lower end of A because I think just generally the Williams is a much better car now, for sure, than it was at the start of the season. But yeah, he's still doing a very good job, but based on what I'm also going to give his teammates, which we'll see a bit later on, I think I've got to put Alex A, but it is on the lower end of A, if that is even a thing. Not really, I just kind of put them in a tier. I don't rank them within the tiers or anything, but yeah, an A for Albon. Fernando Alonso did not finish. Yeah, pretty woeful weekend for Alonso and for Aston Martin as a whole. But Alonso, he spun, I think twice, did he? I vaguely remember he spun in a practice session, and he definitely spun in qualifying. And yeah, I think it was this weekend, right? He spun in qualifying, because I think that's the reason why Norris didn't get through to Q2. Yeah, and Alonso got knocked out in Q2, from what I remember. Was not a good weekend for Alonso. The car is just not there, but he also just had a bit of an off weekend. So I think I'm going to have to go a D for Alonso, just because a spin is something that we don't see from Alonso. We've seen that, twice in the last 3 races, I believe. We've seen Alonso go for a spin kind of on his own. So even if that car is maybe pretty bad, maybe he's trying to overdrive the car a bit, He had all this hope at the start of the season that, he could be on the podium for every race, and that he was pretty confident, I think, he was going to get a win at some point. Now it's barely even looking like Aston Martin are there to even score points. So yeah, pretty woeful weekend for both of them. So yeah, I think a D for Alonso. It's just got to be what I've got to go with. He's had a lot of very good grades this season, so it balances it out a little bit. Valtteri Bottas finished P15. He was the last of the runners that finished. That was mainly because of the incident with Stroll. But yeah, the Alfa Romeo looked promising in qualifying. Both Alfa Romeos got into Q3. And Bottas, especially in Q1 and Q2, was running pretty high up in like the top 6, top 7. Then Q3 he was only P9, and I think he could have done a little bit better in qualifying. I think he left a bit on the table there, only beat his teammate in Q3. But then in the race, the Alfa Romeo just didn't really have any pace. So I'm going to go for... Do I go B? Because... I don't know, really. I think I'm going to have to go C, just because... Yeah, the car seemed good in quali, but in the race just was nowhere. And I think Bottas, yeah, he did about as good as I would expect. So that might be a little bit harsh, but yeah, I think a C is what I'm gonna have to. I can't remember where he was running before that contact with Stroll, but so that may be a bit harsh. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go C, because that's probably where I'm gonna put Zhou as well. Might be a little bit harsh, but we're just gonna have to go with it. Pierre Gasly finished in P11, only just missing out on points behind his teammate, although he was 4 seconds or so behind. Yeah, it was okay from Gasly. I don't really remember. I think they were fighting each other at one point, or no, they got stuck behind Hulkenberg, didn't they, in the Haas for quite a long time. So yeah, Gasly was decent. Where do I put him? He's a few seconds behind his teammate. I can't remember if he qualified ahead of Ock. I think he did, didn't he? I think I'm going to go B. I think I'm going to go a B for Gasly, because I think that's what I'm going to give Ocon as well. So, yeah. I don't know. It's a little bit of a wash, kind of just, I don't know. It's difficult to think of where everybody was in this race, to be honest. There was a lot going on, but also not a lot going on at the same time. Very strange. Lewis Hamilton finished P2. And yeah, I mean, pretty good. His qualifying wasn't great, but his race was really, really good. A great result in the end, a decent way ahead of Leclerc. And yeah, is it an S? Because qualifying wasn't amazing. He only qualified like, I think, P5, P6. So, because what it was, yeah, because he was behind. I'm going to go an A because qualifying definitely wasn't amazing. To be fair, he was still better than Russell in qualifying. But yeah, not beating Ricardo, either of the Ferraris, and I mean Perez. I mean, you wouldn't usually expect him to a Red Bull, but with how Perez is going, I would expect him to beat Perez. So yeah, I'm going to go A for Hamilton here. Nico Hulkenberg, yeah, was doing pretty well. He was hanging on to that P10 position. That Haas was just really good in the straight line, but just pretty woeful through the corners. He held on to that position for quite a long time and did a very good job. Just unfortunately missed out. Ended up, well, actually P13 in the end behind Tsunoda. I'm going to go for a B for Hulkenberg. I think he did about as much as I would have expected. And yeah, was close to points, but yeah, definitely helped out by the fact that his car was a rocket in a straight line. The Alpines just couldn't get past, but when they finally did, he did drop behind Ocon, behind Gasly, and behind Tsunoda. So, yeah, I think a B is reasonable. Charles Leclerc, P3, got pole again, back-to-back poles this season, which is pretty crazy. And yeah, I think did pretty much everything he could have this race. I don't think Leclerc, with the pace that he got, could have done any better. He didn't get a great start, fell down to second straight away. But to be fair, starting on pole in Mexico is never great. Although in saying that, after the restart, after the red flag, Verstappen managed to do it, but he's in a Red Bull. So I almost want to go an S. I think I'm going to go S for Leclerc because he's put that car on pole again. And he was, I think, pretty comfortably ahead of Sainz. He wasn't miles ahead of Sainz this weekend. He had the damage and was still pretty quick. And that damage wasn't his fault at all. That was completely Perez's fault. So I'm going to go S. Maybe that's high. And maybe if I do that, giving Hamilton an S, maybe it's not an S. Okay, you know what? I'm going to go A. I'm going to go A for Leclerc. I think if he got P2, I would have given him an S. I don't think his car was really capable of beating Hamilton, but I'm going to go A. It's very close to an S, but it's going to be an A. Kevin Magnussen, of course, had damage. Well, he went over a curb at turn, whatever it was. I can't remember is it turn 9? Into the S's section. He went over the curb, and then the next lap around at that exact same point, his suspension failed and it slammed him into the wall. Big crash, car set on fire, and that was the red flag. Although it was a suspension failure, I don't think it's a coincidence. I've heard a lot of people say this, that that happened exactly the lap after he rode that curb too much. So, and he was a decent amount off his teammate again this weekend. So I'm going to go D. I'm not going to go all the way to an E because it was a failure. It's a little bit up in the air, but still not a good weekend for Magnussen. Yeah, what else to say? Lando Norris. Now, I'm going to give him an S. He qualified badly. He got unlucky in qualifying, but at the same time didn't manage to put a lap together to get through and got knocked out in Q1. But I do more so weight this on the race, and his performance in the race was absolutely amazing. To come back from pretty much last to finish P5 and only 33 seconds behind the leader, that's pretty impressive, I think. So I think on a track like Mexico as well, which is not easy to overtake on, I think, I can put the quali a little bit behind because I'm focused more on the race anyway, and his race performance was so damn good that it's got to be an S for Lando. Esteban Ocon, yeah, pretty much teased this before. I think a B. I can't remember. I think he got out-qualified by Gasly. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but did manage to, in the end, get that P10 position. Whether that was down to strategy or the red flag helped him, I don't know. But I'd say the two Alpines, once again, were fairly on pace with each other. Now, Sergio Perez. I think when Hamilton had his crash in Qatar on lap 1, which was very similar to this lap 1 crash with Perez, I think I gave him an E. For Perez, though, I'm going to give him an F because, one, he's in a Red Bull. He's in the quickest car on the grid. He should not be doing this. Two, it's his home Grand Prix, so to go out in the first corner in your home Grand Prix must be the most embarrassing and awful thing you can do. And three, he's been on such a spiral of bad form. He finally actually was fairly close to Max in quali, about a tenth and a half off. He finally was getting somewhere. Would have been, I think, if he, kept it, just didn't go so aggressive into that corner, he would have got past Leclerc. He probably would have finished P2, P3 at the worst behind Hamilton, but I think he probably would have had P2. And he threw it away. So it's got to be an F for Perez. I really do worry for him, even for next season, to be honest, especially with the performance that Ricciardo put in this weekend. Yeah, Perez is he's gonna be worried. I'll say that. I think he already is. I think that's one of the main reasons why he's not doing so well at the moment. Although I think the car just also isn't to his liking. Oscar Piastri, bit of a poor weekend for Piastri. P8 in the end. Didn't have the pace of Lando at all, to be honest. Yeah, was way off. Qualified, we got into Q3, decent qualifying, but only P7. I would have expected a bit more, maybe. And yeah, just had no pace in the race at all. I think I'm going to go C. I'm not going to go all the way down to D. But the fact that, Lando started at the back and managed to get past Piastri and then finish a good 10 seconds up the road, it's not great for Piastri in this race. So a bit of a wonky one here, but yeah, I'm still going to go for a C, just kind of an average grade. Daniel Ricciardo gets an S. What a weekend for him. Qualified P4 alongside Verstappen on the grid. Out-qualified Perez in the Red Bull. That is, I mean, that probably put shakes in Perez's boots straight away, and didn't help him for the race. And then, yeah, came through to finish P7 in an AlphaTauri. Pretty damn remarkable, I think. Amazing weekend for Ricciardo. Awesome to see him back again. Yeah, really happy with that. George Russell finished P6. Was a decent way behind Hamilton this weekend, actually. I'm going to go with C. P6 isn't terrible, but yeah, Norris managed to finish ahead of him, and he was way off Hamilton this weekend. Russell's been a weird one this year. He's had his moments of brilliance, but he's, on the most part, been a decent chunk behind Hamilton, to be honest, mainly in the races. So yeah, I hope he picks it up because he's really not looking great at the moment. Carlos Sainz, pretty good weekend for Sainz, of course, on the front row with Leclerc very close to pole position there. I mean, it was less than a tenth, I think, between the top three. And then, yeah, didn't finish too far behind Leclerc in the end either. So I'm going to go for an A. I'm going to give him the same grade as Leclerc. If I was doing this in some sort of order, I would put Leclerc higher than Sainz. But I think both Ferrari drivers did a pretty good job this weekend. P3 and P4, I think that's about as much as they could have hoped for here this weekend. Logan Sargeant finished, well, technically didn't actually finish because he came into the pits right at the last lap. But was running, I believe, P12, not far behind Albon, I don't think. So I'm going to go for a B. That's the reason why I've kind of given Alex an A, because he definitely did better. But I think this was a decent weekend for Logan. A good bounce back, well, not bounce back, a good kind of carry on from his point finish. Bit of a lucky point finish, but still a point finish in COTA. So yeah, I think a B for Logan. One of his better races this year. Lance Stroll, yeah, just once again, Aston Martin nowhere. Stroll, that contact with Bottas was completely his fault. I'm also going to give him a D. I don't think I can give him less than that. Yeah, the contact was his fault, but I mean, I think I'm just going to give him a D. I think an E is a little bit harsh. He didn't write off the car. I mean, he did retire, I think, because of that damage. But yeah, I think a D. What else can I say? Yuki Tsunoda, it was looking good for Tsunoda. Started from the pit lane, I think, or at least right at the back because of changing some components, and was coming through for a very good finish actually, and then just did a Perez, but on Piastri, completely his fault. a little bit silly by Tsunoda because he threw away, I think, some pretty decent points there. So, yeah, he had really good pace up until that point. So, a D, I think if he managed to get past Piastri, or at least just even if he stayed behind Piastri and finished there, I probably would have given him an A from where he started. Because of that contact, though, I'm going to go for a D. Because it ruined his race, it got rid of his points that he was looking to be P8, maybe even P7. So, yeah, not good for Tsunoda at the end. Verstappen, very good from Verstappen, great race. Didn't quite have it in qualifying, but I mean, he was so close that he might as well have been there. Yeah, and he got the lead straight away. So I think it's got to be an S. I was thinking, do I go an A because he didn't get pole, but it was so close, and he literally got the lead straight away that I don't think it mattered. Well, it didn't matter at all in the end. So yeah, I think an S for Verstappen. And then finally, Zhou Guanyu, it's got to be a C. Alfa Romeo, good qualifying once again, but a little bit off Bottas this weekend, and I'm not sure where either of them were in the race. So yeah, they finished bottom of the two finishers in the end, so a real drop-off from qualifying, but that's kind of what we expect from Alfa Romeo, just kind of nothing, the odd little blip of hope, and then nothing again. So there we go, that is my driver tier list for the 2023 Mexico City Grand Prix. I've actually got a very orderly list this time, you know, 3 in S, and then we've got 4 in A, B, C, and D, and then Perez on his own in F there. But yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. If you enjoyed, please go ahead, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.